So this is the Norton Conservation Commission meeting for Monday, October 24th, 2022. It is now 6:30 p.m. and as is required for this being a Zoom meeting, we have to read a preamble concerning suspension of certain provisions of the open meeting law. And Dan, if you're up for that.
Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, GL Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Norton Conservation Commission will be conducted via participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information, general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and or parties with a right and or requirement to attend this meeting can be found at the end of this agenda. Members of the public attending this public hearing virtually will be allowed to make comments if they wish to do so during the hearing designated for public comment by raising their hand virtually or pressing *9 if participating by phone. In-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the Norton Cable website, www.nortonmediacenter.org, an audio or video recording transcript or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting.
Thank you, Dan. So participating in the meeting tonight, we have our director, John Thomas, our assistant director, Megan Harrop, and Conservation Commission members are myself, Julian Kadish, chair, vice chair does not appear to be able to attend tonight. That's Lisa Carroza. And we have Dan Pearson, Ron O'Reilly, Mark Fernandez, and Tama Vest. And I don't think I forgot anybody on the screen. So our format is that during a hearing, first the presenter will present the details, commission members will then ask questions, and then we can open it up to the public. Members of the public may ask questions by either going to the reactions button, which has a hand raising option, or if we miss that, you can unmute yourself and just speak up, and we will make an effort to recognize you. So our initial item on new business is listed as an enforcement order for 0 Rear East Main Street, map 11, parcel 14. So maybe, John, you can give us some details on that issue.
Sure. So probably about maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, I received a call from the Environmental Police, Mass DEP, and they notified me that there's been some sort of structure or something on their property. So I've also received calls from neighbors and also the Land Preservation Society on this matter, as there's been some illicit cutting activities and ATV use of the lands over there to gain access to the Commonwealth property. So I went out there with DFW, with Mr. Zimmer of the Division of Fish and Wildlife, and we walked over the area, and they noticed and confirmed that the structure itself, the bridge structure that was in the violation notice that I sent over to the members in the files, I issued it to the offender that the Environmental Police identified as being the person that they've talked to. So that person was notified, and after discussions, deliberations with them in the field, with the DFW and also the Environmental Police, they thought that the best course of action would be to issue an enforcement order on this matter. So that's kind of what I'm proposing to the commission. Obviously, I need to get their votes to issue the enforcement order, but I guess that's kind of the action that's been kind of advised from us from the state. So I just want to reinforce that to the commission that this is something that we should also do.
Can you provide a locus as to where this is, or?
Sure.
Is that
I
part of the project?
definitely can. Let me just pull it up on our viewer.
Yeah, I tried to locate it with the map and parcel number, but with the resources I had, I couldn't.
Yeah. Give me
find it.
Give me 1 second.
Yeah.
So it abuts the Canoe River. And I can kind of give you a general area. I don't really have, I'll just share my screen right now so we can see it. So can everyone see this?
Yes.
So-
Yeah.
So just to give everybody a reference, this is 495, East Main Street's here. The new rail trail is coming in here, and the LPS, the Reinhardt pasture, I don't know if anyone's ever been familiar with the area, but the issue at hand is that there's been some trail activity that's kind of been enhanced to an extent that's kind of excessive through here, and there's the person that was doing the work has built a bridge crossing the Canoe River at a location approximately right here, and that structure, there was no permit filed, nor did that person have authority or authorization to install that structure because it was on Commonwealth property. So that's kind of the scenario as it is currently.
So that bridge crosses the Canoe River?
Yes.
John, in one of the documents that was sent out, I see a similar map, but with a red dotted line drawing.
That was from one of the neighbors that reported this
Okay,
as to it being the approximate location.
gotcha.
The DFW has actually taken GPS coordinates of that structure, and they have taken a lot of photographs. So they have all the information to actually put it on a map if they need to.
Okay.
I did not have those resources, so I just said that's fine. We'll use that if we need to. But that structure is there. It's still currently there, but it provides a lot of access to the Commonwealth's property, and there's a lot of trails that have been illicit trails that have been created in the process that they would like to basically stop. So their plan is actually remove this structure as soon as possible, but they also want to get Mass DEP's guidance as to kind of what the next steps would be for mitigation, because the activity has created some impacts to the adjacent bank, and they also want to make sure that all the efforts that they're doing are in compliance with the state's jurisdictional regulations.
So the access for this bridge, I assume, is this 20-acre parcel labeled 524?
That's correct, and that's the Reinhardt pasture that is owned by the LPS.
LPS stands for what?
Land Preservation
Land
Society.
Preservation Society.
I see.
The Norton Land Preservation Society.
Correct.
Right. So who is the individual, or where is I assume Land Preservation did not put this in there.
Well, the offender that's doing the work, that has admitted to doing the work, is the person that lives at this residence here at 23 North Washington Street.
Okay.
So they've been contacted by the state, and they have also been contacted by us. We sent out a violation notice to them, notifying them to be present at this meeting tonight. And I don't know if they're on the call this evening, but they're more than able to speak up to this matter if they want to, if they're here. But it's my understanding that the state wants some action associated with this, so I'm just making sure that I'm in compliance with what my job basically is to do, is to make sure that everybody's following the rules when it comes to any sort of work that's going to be in proximity to a perennial stream, but also any sort of thing that may be requiring stream crossing standards, and making sure that they get conservation approval for any sort of structure.
The irony is, come springtime, with fluctuations of the water level of the Canoe River, that structure will probably leave town if it's not removed before. I mean, Canoe River has significant changes in flow, and so constructing it during a drought is not likely to stay in place when it comes to high water. But that's a totally different issue than the violation that it is.
So, if I may just clarify, we have two issues here. One is the bridge and the other is ATVs. They're both violations or just the ATV use?
Both items are alterations and also considered violations, Dan.
Okay.
More so the bridge construction being not a non-conforming structure that was illicitly placed within a lot of different jurisdictional resource areas and also within an area that's designated for natural heritage protection. So that was one of the things that DFW was very concerned about, was if the construction of this bridge potentially had any take on any sort of potential mussels that were within the Canoe River area.
Mm-hmm.
So
ATVs can overrun or crush nests and eggs and so forth, and wildlife.
I mean, it's my understanding that ATVs are prohibited in town based on what I've read from my predecessor's notes on conservation lands here in town. Mike, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to throw in real quick. I didn't mean to disrupt our proceedings, but the area in question is a watershed management area, and it's an area of critical environmental concern for the state. Bottom line is that the ATV activity is simply not allowed, nor is the bridge. So that's why John, to his credit, filed the report, and we're trying to go in this direction. So.
And Mike's a part of the LPS, the Land Preservation Society, and I've kind of kept him in the loop on kind of the scenario that's kind of unfolded with this whole illicit activity that's occurred.
Thanks for being here tonight, Mike.
No problem. Thank you.
So I would even, can we, I don't know, levy fines? I know you're doing an enforcement order, but, and if not, can we threaten with fines if it happens again?
So, do you want me to say that, Julian, or do you want to speak on that?
No, well, you can correct me. It's not my understanding that we ever passed a bylaw that gives us any kind of fine structure.
I mean, I do want to make sure that people are following the rules, and with non-compliance and non-conformance, I will just notify DEP, and DEP will take action. I think there's been scenarios where DEP has issued fines up to $30,000 a day for non-conforming and non-compliance. I don't think that's going to be the case for this one, but I think that there would be the need for fines if the specific individual was not willing to comply with said requests from DEP or said requests from the environmental police. I think if they comply with kind of what the procedure is going to be and how it unfolds as it moves forward, then I think it's going to be an easier process for them. But that's for the individual and offender to weigh their options.
Well, it sounds like this individual felt unusually entitled to undertake multiple episodes of trespass onto both Land Preservation Society land as well as the Commonwealth land, and that's, I'm assuming, a local law enforcement issue. And then the wetland issues we would certainly deal with. But I mean, do you really think this individual was unaware that he was crossing into land owned by other entities, or he just decided?
Was this individual, may I ask, a minor? You couldn't tell us if it were a minor, I suppose. I mean,
I have not met the person, so I'm not going to comment on that.
Okay.
I do know from my discussions with the environmental police officer that I spoke with for about a half an hour that they were very, I guess, difficult to work with, I guess is a nice way of saying it. So, my regard is that I just want to make sure that it's on record with the DEP and also on record for the benefit of DFW for, I guess, bringing resolution to this. And this is kind of the best course of action that I have to kind of get DEP involved. I've already notified DEP of the instance, and, I just said that I need to get approval through the Conservation Commission to make this official.
Well, if you need motion, I'm so moved.
Can I just ask quickly, just another clarifying question? You can certainly go that direction. John, the pictures you included also seem to show a number of trees that were cut down. I was just wondering if you could speak to that a little bit.
Correct. As part of the, I guess, infraction, there were a lot of trees and a lot of shrubs that were taken down in the process. Vegetation was removed. It was used to make some of the foundation for the bridge. So a lot of trees were felled in the process. I don't know specifically how many trees were felled, but there was a handful of them.
The irony is,
not on the property, offenders, not on his property. Is that correct? It's all.
That's correct. It's all on LPS and all on Commonwealth property.
And how much of it was in wetland areas, resource areas versus
Majority of it.
Okay, thanks.
Because it's all within the riverfront area, so it's within a resource area.
the irony is, from the personality type you described, if a similar event happened on land that he owned, he would probably be outraged. But nevertheless, we just have to let him know that this is behavior inappropriate in a law-abiding town. So, Dan, you were going to make a motion that we issue an enforcement order for this activity?
Yes, with gusto. So moved.
We have a motion made by Dan and seconded by?
Second.
Seconded by Tama. So as we have had to do with remote Zoom meetings, roll call vote starting with Mark and Ron.
Aye.
Aye.
And Dan and Tama.
Aye.
Aye.
And I will throw in an aye. So the motion carries. And John, you'll move forward, I'm assuming, with the enforcement order.
Can I just ask a question? So is this the kind of the last that Concom will be involved in this, or are there other mechanisms of enforcement that will get either updated or?
So the next step is that I'll be in touch with DEP and see what kind of action is going to be. I mean, there's going to be some form of mitigation that's going to be needed following the removal of the bridge structure, and whether replanting or bank stabilization and mitigations needed as part of this project, that's for DEP to kind of weigh in on. It is the Commonwealth's property, so they're going to also want to make sure that they gather whoever they want to work with on this project.
And the Land Preservation Society would independently.
So one of the parts that would have to happen would be getting access potentially through Land Preservation Society or in a butter's property to get access to this area for removing and depositing whatever they take out from the area that was the bridge area.
And Tama, as a comment, historically, no, it's not likely that this will be the last we will see of this. Traditionally, some citizens are understanding and cooperative, and others are very painful to sustain. So from what I've heard so far, this is probably going to be a chronic open sore.
That's not true.
Well, okay, that's a very good step forward. Why don't you identify yourself and comment if you'd like?
I'm listening to this to find out what's going on. There was no ill intent on any of that. I know that for a fact. It was done for the good. It wasn't done for the bad. And it's not somebody that causes trouble. So
All right.
I have I have mixed concerns, but I understand certain rules. But it wasn't done with ill intent.
Okay, that's very good to hear, and I think the commission will appreciate that. So our next item, unless there are further comments or questions, our next item is a determination 1128. This is a request for determination of applicability. Is that correct? Not a notice. It's for 91 Bay Road concerning the proposed plan to add a covered porch deck and appurtenant egress features to an existing single-family house. So I'm going to ask you, John, in all honesty, when did you learn the word appurtenant?
Probably about 10 years ago.
Well, this is a new one for me, so I looked it up, and I see the highlight of its use in language was in the 1950s. It's coming to be much less frequent, and I had to learn the definition as a secondary component of the
Julian, may I ask the chair if this business is pertinent to the just kidding.
Well, I'm just trying to
when
understand the
to talk.
proceeding completely. It's primarily a real estate term. I guess it's used in regular language. But
It's my
usually
understanding, maybe Peter Lyons can address this as well, but it's my understanding it's used in engineering quite a bit. Is that right, Peter?
I've heard it used, yes. It's not on the top 10 in my personal vocabulary, but I understand the definition.
All right. So it sounds like Peter is the representative of the applicant, and you can take it away.
Yeah, that is correct. For the record, Peter Lyons with Collins Civil Engineering Group, representing the homeowner here. This is a request for determination of applicability relative to the enhancement of some residential projects. I can share my plan and point us around a little easier.
You should be able to.
Can you see it?
We do.
All right. Yeah, so this is 91 Bay Road. In the southwestern corner or southeastern corner of the property, we have a pond with an associated BVW delineated by flags 1 through 8. The delineation was performed by Brooke Monroe in July of 22 this year. Our proposed work is shown on this plan in red. We have also proposed a septic system out here, but that's all outside of conservation jurisdiction. That has all been previously approved. So I guess you can kind of ignore that. We're just looking at the stuff in red. Basically, we're looking to provide a new deck off the rear of the existing house with some access to the basement on the southern portion. So this will be a staircase and a subgrade basement access. So there will be some excavation required to basically tie in with the existing bulkhead in the back. We're proposing an egress window for the basement outside the 100-foot buffer, as well as a covered porch, again, outside of the 100. So a couple things in the back of the house, just some quick numbers. The proposed deck is shown at 77 feet to the resource area. That's the closest point. We've provided erosion control as a 8-inch straw wattle wrapping from the existing garage around the entire proposed work, including the septic limits, extending well outside the 100-foot buffer for this project. Access will occur from the northern portion of the property for the construction. All of this work is being done in previously disturbed lawn areas. We're not removing any trees. We're not altering any grading or drainage patterns on the site. Overall, this what we would consider a very minimal impact project to the resource areas and the associative buffer zones. That's a quick rundown. If the commission has any questions on this, I'd be happy to do my best to answer them. That's all. Thank you.
So I see you have a couple of trees in the vicinity of the work between the house and the pond, but all the rest of it is lawn up to the edge of the wetland.
That is correct. Yep.
Now this is kind of a comment, and you know other members of the commission can offer their opinion as well. But this appears to be a very gentle slope. I mean, like maybe 5 feet in 130 feet. And I always wonder if the erosion controls really serve any meaningful function with a slope that flat, particularly since you're not really proposing to stockpile a lot of excavated material in that zone. Is that correct?
Yeah, I guess I could speak quickly to that. I mean, any slope, is considered somewhat of a risk for, sediment migration. A lot of the reason that we propose this, is erosion control, but it's also the work limit,
Yeah.
So by establishing this is all staked out in the field. So yes, it is going to give us erosion protection, but it's also going to make sure the contractors are staying within the approved limits of work. They're not going to be looking to drive their trucks and stuff over the straw wattles, to park a truck out back to get it a little closer to the project. So it really serves two purposes. That's why we list it as erosion control and then in parentheses, a work limit. So, would this project specifically cause an impact to the pond without the erosion control? Probably not, but it's a simple enough, preventative measure, and it'll keep everyone honest and keep them working within their boundaries.
So the septic system is not installed at this time. Is that correct?
I do not believe it is, no.
So that will be your access, and you'll do the other work first and then finalize with the septic system completion?
I believe that is the procedure, yeah. To basically start in the back and work their way around, or they may be done somewhat concurrently. But the septic is not designed for vehicle traffic, so if the septic went in first, they'd just have to be carrying all their lumber and stuff around and, cautiously working any excavation equipment into the back area.
Any commission members, or John, do you have any comments to add?
I have no comments to add on this project. Wetlands were confirmed, flags were there, no issues.
Any other comments or questions from commission members? This is fairly limited within our jurisdiction. Any comments or questions from members of the audience? And if not, this is a request for determination of applicability. And assuming it's done according to plan, we potentially could issue a negative determination, meaning there is no requirement to file a formal notice. But unless there are further questions or comments, we can consider a motion to close the public hearing for this.
So moved.
Motion made by Ron and seconded by Dan. Roll call vote beginning with Mark and Ron.
Aye.
Aye.
And Dan and Tama.
Aye.
Aye.
And I'll throw in an aye, so the hearing is closed and we can consider a motion for a -3 with regard to the request for determination.
Move.
We have a motion by Ron, seconded by?
Second.
By Dan. So again, roll call vote, starting with Mark and Ron,
Aye.
Aye.
and Tama and Dan.
Aye.
And I'll throw in an aye, so the motion carries. The determination is negative, meaning that the project can be done according to plan, and a notice of intent is not required to go forward.
Thanks, Peter.
All right, thank you all.
Thank you.
All right.
And our next agenda item is a notice of intent for file number 250-1116 Pratt Avenue concerning proposed work to construct a pool and patio area within 100 foot of bordering vegetated wetlands. Do we have a representative of the applicant?
Yes, Chris Vandenberg with Civil and Environmental Consultants.
Why don't you give us a summary of the project?
So we actually did request a continuance on this matter. I believe it was sent over to Megan. I believe it was sometime, I believe before the deadline. But just kind of hopping on this Zoom call, just kind of get a couple of things of feedback. I know, Mr. Chairman, you ended up sending me, I believe, a couple of comments here about revising the NOI application, filing a stormwater form per your requirements of work less than an acre.
That was me, not the chair, by the way.
Okay.
The conservation director, that's me.
Okay, she was okay.
Okay.
So, he suggested, or not suggested, well, he suggested addressing pool management and emergency pool drainage. Is that something that's typically involved with like an O&M of the pool company itself? I don't know personally.
Yeah, I mean the biggest question that I would have with that is kind of just having a simplified operation and maintenance plan on a worst case scenario as to let's say for instance there's an immediate breach or something in the pool and the pool needs to be what's the filter system going to be? How is it going to be drained in the event of some sort of, issue? I think that just having that kind of O&M kind of worst case emergency, preparedness plan in action, just kind of have that would be good.
If pool companies at least have, I mean, again, I don't know the first thing of owning a pool, so I don't even know how to even talk about that,
Right. And, we may be able to condition that, as something that the pool company would probably give. And they probably have the ability to do that. It's just making note that it would be something that you would provide.
Okay. And for like, I guess, it looks like it's a simplified O&M. Is this just simply like a construction period O&M or like a long-term O&M?
Just to kind of have a simplified O&M. So operation and maintenance on like how often you would basically clean the pool, how often you would, chalk it or whatever it's going to be, kind of just giving us an idea because you are within the jurisdiction, you are within proximity to a resource area. So we want to make sure that, we just have that information on hand.
Would you need to see notes regarding like silt fence to be installed prior to this or silt fence to be inspected?
I mean, that's typical. So I would just think that would be something that would happen.
Yep. But would you like to see like notes like that on the plan?
On the plan, I mean, obviously the silt fence should be installed prior to you doing any work out there.
Obviously, like, should a note be like said that, like, so you're kind of more referring to like, the site specific aspect of having a pool, how often it will be cleaned, how often it will be shocked and this and that.
Yeah, I'm just throwing examples. Obviously, you'd have to talk to the pool installer and see what they typically give.
Yep.
I would just want to see something on paper that says this is kind of the O&M for how they're going to operate the pool, and whether it's going to be a management company or whether it's going to be the person that's doing it itself,
Yep.
the homeowner,
Okay, so obviously I know like I do know like sometimes you have to backwash like the filter and like
Right.
wash it into the resource area.
Right, and that's typical too. We want to make sure that whatever you're doing is going to be captured and it's not going to impose any sort of negative impacts within the buffer zone.
Okay, and then I see you wanted us to rehang the wetland flags and then have would it be you going out in the field?
So I don't hang flags on notice of intent projects. Sometimes on small scale requests for determinations, I can evaluate the wetlands, but on notice of intent projects, I typically leave that up to the applicant to do.
Oh yeah, that's what I meant. Like we will go and hang them out, but you will then confirm.
I will go out there and I will verify the wetland flags for you. Yes.
Okay. Now, if there's any differences, we simply just
You would make adjustments on that based on my evaluation of the wetlands, unless
Okay.
you wanted to get a peer review consultant, but
Yep.
obviously that's up to you.
Okay. So, and then as far as the O&M is concerned, that can just be like notes on the plan. It doesn't have to be like a specific separate document we provide you.
Yeah, as long as there's a typical O&M on how you're going to manage that pool, I think we're good.
Okay. I think.
All right, so then, are you the homeowner, by the way?
No. The homeowner is on the call. I don't know if he wants to speak at all, but I know he is on.
But you are,
Oh, I am the applicant's representative working for Civil and Environmental Consultants.
okay. And then, so we can expect in the future, we'll have a plan to
Yes.
show to everyone, and you'll work on addressing these other issues.
Yes.
So our next meeting is coming up on November 14th. Is that a reasonable time frame for you to work on this, or do you want it? The next meeting after that is November 28th. So, what would you prefer?
When does all the materials have to be? I know, like, the biggest thing would probably be, reflatting the wetlands and then getting Thomas out there to confirm the line, and like that lag time. How long is that?
I mean, I honestly would suggest having the wetlands flagged this week, and hopefully having me to be able to verify those. And as the process moves forward, I think we can work with you and make that meeting on the 14th if that's something that you can make happen.
Okay, yeah, we can try to shoot for the 14th then.
All right, so unless there are further questions or comments, we can consider a motion for continuation of this hearing until November 14th.
So moved. Second.
Okay. We have a motion made by Dan and seconded by Ron, and a roll call vote starting with Mark and Ron.
Aye.
And I'm not sure what happened to Ron, but we'll go with Dan and
Aye.
throw in, and Ron made it there. So 4 ayes, and
Aye.
the motion carries. Tama, did I miss you? Well, we got everybody. So the motion carries. This will come up again on the agenda on November 14th. Our next item on the agenda is continued public hearings. And that first one on that list is 0 Eddy Street, file number 250-1070, White Oak Share Corporation, concerning construction of a common driveway with 4 duplex units. Do we have a representative of the applicant? Let's go. Okay.
Okay, for the record, my name is Margaret Bacon. I'm a civil engineer and owner of Civil Site Engineering. And I'm here tonight just to kind of give you a brief update on the project for 0 Eddy Street. I would like to say I do appreciate the commission's patience and Mr. Chessia's productive comments regarding the stormwater. And I do understand this report has really taken much longer than it should have, but they're due to unforeseen issues. Couldn't be helped. But I believe at this point we're kind of getting near the finish line with the stormwater, and I probably need to send Mr. Chessia one other iteration of the plans and the report, and I think we could probably wrap this up.
Do you think that you're going to have something for the next meeting, or?
I would like the 28th so that I can give Mr. Chessia something and he has time to give me comments back.
Okay, because I'll have to make sure that we have a quorum for this project because we currently don't at the moment. So I'll just need to make sure that we have the necessary members at that meeting if you're going to present new material on the 28th.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Unless there are further comments, then you would like to continue this until November 28th?
Correct.
All right, and first, I don't know if there are any members of the audience that have any questions about this project. It's been long running, I guess, since January of 2021. But I don't see any hands up or anyone asking a question, so we can consider a motion for continuation of file number 250-1070 until November
So
28th.
moved.
Motion made by Dan and seconded by?
Second.
Seconded by Ron. So roll call vote, starting with Tama and Mark.
Aye.
Aye.
And Dan and Ron.
Aye.
And I'll throw in an aye, so we'll see you guys on the 28th.
Thank you very much.
Thank
All
you.
right. Next item is file number 250-1093. It's a notice of intent for 70 Oak Street concerning a proposed project to construct a driveway and utilities. That applicant has also requested a continuation until December 12th. So we have a motion made by Dan and seconded by?
Second.
Seconded by Ron, and a roll call vote starting with Tama and Mark,
Aye.
Aye.
and Dan and Ron.
Aye.
Aye.
And I'll throw in an aye, so that the hearing is continued until December 12th. We have next file number 250-1108, notice of intent for 0 Hill Street concerning the construction of a single-story, 9,900 square foot machine and fabricating facility, and they are also requesting a continuation, but until November 14th.
So moved. Second.
Motion made by Dan, seconded by Ron. So roll call vote with Tama and Mark,
Aye.
Aye.
and Ron and Dan.
Aye.
And I'll throw in an aye, so that hearing is continued until November 14th. The next hearing on the agenda is file number 250-1105, notice of intent, Pine Street Cluster. They are requesting continuation until November 14th.
So moved. Second.
Motion made by Dan, seconded by Ron. Roll call vote, starting with Tama and Mark,
Aye.
Aye.
and Dan and Ron.
Aye.
And I'll throw in an aye, so Pine Street Cluster hearing is continued until November 14th. We have file number 250-1114, notice of intent for file number 306, 308 East Main Street, otherwise known as Birmingham Phil's Warehouse. And doesn't say on the agenda requesting continuation, so do we have a representative of the applicant?
They requested a continuance this morning. So
Okay.
So
Till-
moved.
till the next meeting, right, Megan? The 14th?
Yes, that's what I told them. They hadn't specified.
Okay.
All right. So I think Dan made the motion, and is there a second for that?
Second.
And Ron seconded it. So starting with Tama and Mark,
Aye.
and Dan and Ron.
Aye.
Aye.
And I'll throw in an aye, so file number 250-1114, notice of intent, hearing is continued until November 14th. The next item is file number 250-1115, notice of intent for 0 King Philip Road for a project involving construction of a single-family residence with associated driveway, garage, and utilities. I believe there is a representative of the applicant for that project.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. My name is Chris Lucas with Lucas Environmental, professional wetland scientist and certified wetland scientist and registered professional soil scientist. We've provided a updated plan to address the comments from the board as well as your agent, Mr. Thomas. With your permission, I'd like to share my screen so we can run through the plan revisions and open it up to questions with the board. So that's
I think you're good to go.
Great, thank you. Okay. Can you see this plan here?
We can. It might have to be enlarged a bit, but we can see the whole plan.
I will zoom in momentarily. I just want to show some larger items, some of the items here. We've revised the color coding on this. Some of the original color is still the same, but we've updated it to address and clarify impact areas and whatnot. So just as a brief summary, this line in green here is the edge of the wetland line, is delineated. The line in blue is your 25-foot no disturb per your policy. The line in yellow is the 100-foot buffer zone. This line in red here is the 70-foot contour, which is the limit of the wetland overlay district per your local regulations, zoning. The arrows show that the direction it's pointing, so it's everything to the left of that line is part of that overlay. In orange here, we have the 73-foot contour, which is the FEMA 100-year floodplain elevation, which is also coincidental with the Norton Floodplain Protection District. So everything down gradient of that line would be in that overlay district. Again, King Philip Road is to the north here. We have a proposed driveway coming in along the eastern property line. It's gravel, paved driveway here with a new structure. The line in orange here has been adjusted. This is the erosion control and sediment control barrier, which runs along this line. We've shifted it to this location here, along here, and then along the back. We have a permanent signage and demarcation here, as well as a split rail fence to prevent any further encroachment to the back of the lot. One of the changes we've made per the discussion at the last hearing, we're avoiding this portion of the 25-foot no disturb zone. We are still disturbing this little portion here, and I'll enlarge this momentarily, where we've shifted the utilities underground here instead of overhead as previously demonstrated, and we need 6 feet off the edge of the driveway to install those utilities. So they will be underground, and this area will be loamed and seeded with the rest of the mitigation. So it'll be a temporary disturbance, and it'll be restored upon completion. This area here will not be touched. But I'd like to show the commission some additional things we've added to the plan, because I know there were questions about the 25-foot. One of the, oops, sorry, too many clicks. This area to the back of the lot, this is the area where we found the higher value wildlife habitat, large diameter pine trees and such. We will be avoiding this area, and this is going to remain as a no disturb zone, not just the 25-foot, but the remainder of the buffer will not be touched. So this area is going to be preserved, and it's just under 5,000 square feet in size will be preserved. What we've also shown, this green area here is the permanent disturbance. Sorry, my little hand's not grabbing. This area in green hatching is the permanent disturbance within your 25-foot no disturb zone. It includes a portion of the backyard, the flood compensatory storage, the deck, a portion of the structure, and the paved driveway. The remainder of it is for the gravel driveway that we cannot avoid. As you recall from previous discussions, this is a non-conforming lot that was created prior to the Wetlands Protection Act and your local policy. As we stated before, there's no way to avoid this portion and have access to the site. The total disturbance, permanent disturbance in the 25-foot no disturb zone is roughly 4,800 square feet and change. It's equivalent to the area we're preserving in the back. If you remove the gravel driveway, it's about 3,000 square feet. Just want to give you a perspective on that for your consideration that, you know, this area here through the back is roughly 3,000 square feet in that no disturb zone. The utility area that we're going to be restoring upon completion, as you can see, we have it in orange with this X hatching. That's going to be part of our mitigation area. There's just under 1,400 square feet here that will be impacted and restored in place. And what we're also proposing to offset and to provide the commission. This area in the front of the lot is currently disturbed. We've added the tree line to show the area that is disturbed. So everything in this area currently right now is disturbed. We provided photos in the packet, which I do have here. So just to give you an idea that the site is disturbed in this area. It's basically lawn at this time. There's no vegetation or anything like that up at the front, and those photos correspond to this area here up in the front. So what we're proposing here is this whole area upon completion of construction is going to be mitigated. We originally proposed a seed mix. What we are now proposing is a seed mix along with several shrubs and trees. We provide a little table here. You can see the actual trees. So we have a woody planting to make this a little more robust at the request of your agent. So all in all, we're providing roughly 4,000 square feet of mitigation at the front of the site. Roughly half of it's in the 25-foot no disturb, and the rest is in the floodplain and buffer zone to that. So overall, we're permanently disturbing roughly 4,900 square feet of the 25-foot no disturb zone. We're providing mitigation of roughly 4,000 square feet of currently disturbed and degraded, mostly lawn. And we're also preserving 4,900 square feet of the higher value portion of the lot. So again, with that, I think that addresses the comments raised by your agent, and the project team's here to answer any other questions you might have this evening. Thank you.
Okay. Any comments from members of the, pardon me, members of the commission or John?
I guess I'll start. I commend Chris and Larry Tilton and his team on getting this together. This is a great visual here to kind of see kind of what you're proposing, and I think that this is definitely something that I'd like to see as part of this project. That's part one of this. You guys have done a great job of getting all this information to us. The other flip side is the stuff that's outside our jurisdiction. Obviously, you have provided a letter that you would be discussing this with the planning board. I don't know what the status is for that, but as in talking with other involvement within interior towns, it's written in that zoning bylaw stuff that there is comments that are supposed to be made from the Conservation Commission to the planning board on this. So that's kind of what I need to kind of get a status report on kind of where you stand with that right now, because I think the commission should be able to provide comments on this project to the planning board before issuing a permit. So that's kind of where I'm kind of thinking direction wise. So could you provide some, I guess, information on where you stand with the planning board?
I can start with that, and Attorney Brace is here as well. We provided a letter. Obviously, we don't believe Article 5 is applicable with the Wetland Conservation Overlay District. Regarding Article 13, Attorney Brace has indicated that the applicant will speak with the planning board. Regarding that, though, that is a planning board issue and not before the commission. So we would like to move forward with the commission. If there are any changes or requirements done through the planning board process, we'll come back for an amendment, but we don't anticipate that, and we would like to move this along tonight. Attorney Brace is here if you have anything else to add to that.
No, I agree.
So I guess the other question for the commission then, and I talked to the commission about that, is that some of the parameters within the zoning bylaw refer to a floodway. So, it's important for the commission to be able to basically provide the planning board that information, because we deal with this stuff on a day-to-day basis on what constitutes a floodway. So that's kind of what I guess needs to be identified as part of this project, because that's one of the comments that the planning board's going to request of the Conservation Commission is if this project is within a floodway. that's going to be one of the first comments they ask us. So
This,
I think, go ahead, Chris.
I'm sorry. I was going to say this project site's not located within a FEMA regulated floodway. The FEMA mapping shows those areas. This is not located in one.
But can you clarify, you talked about the orange line representing the floodplain. Is that correct, or did I misunderstand that?
The orange line is the floodplain. And per last several hearings we've had, we've fully complied with the performance standards for work within the floodplain. We provided the appropriate flood compensation storage. We've documented that. The next sheet shows the areas graphically. Tilton has verified that we have the proper comp storage foot by foot. DEP's comments were limited on it, that they just wanted it added to the plans for clarity, which we've done. So I think at this point we've well demonstrated that this project complies with the performance standards for boarding land subject to flooding, and the structure is FEMA compliant.
Okay, so from the zoning bylaw, I'm just going to read and define what floodway is defined as. It says it means the channel of a river or other watercourse and the adjacent land areas that shall be reserved in order to discharge the base flood without cumulatively increasing the water surface elevation.
Right.
So it's my understanding that would include watercourses, which also include drainage ways, which you have a drainage way on the property. Is that correct?
We do have a drainage way, but the FEMA mapping specifically identifies regulatory floodways. The more current mapping has them clearly marked out in a separate color on the mapping. This site is not located within one. Typically you see those in larger flowing rivers and whatnot. So, but we do not have a regulated floodway per FEMA on this site.
Yes, but it does not state per FEMA. In here, the definition states exactly what I said. So that's what the town determines a floodway as. So that's why I say it's important to consult the planning board, because the commission, they're going to be looking towards the commission to make a comment on this per se. And that's what I'm getting at, is that it's unclear as to whether that drainage way would constitute a floodway.
I can't speak to the zoning regs. We're not here before the planning board.
No, I know, but I'm not saying to the zoning regs. I'm saying, like, for instance, it's going to come back to the commission. So what I'm saying is that if my commission was to make a decision, there would have to be some sort of amendment or something of note, because they'd have to comment on this. That's what I'm getting at.
Right, and if we have to make changes, we can come back before the board, but that I'd have to look up the exact definition of the FEMA regulatory floodway, but that definition sounds pretty close to it. So I don't know if that was the reasoning behind it, and if it is, then we don't have it on the site. If we need to show something like that to the planning board, we can add it to a plan, and if that requires an amendment to the commission, we can come back. Again, we want to work with this board, but we don't want to further delay the permit in front of you.
And as I have no intention of further delaying this permit. I mean, you guys have done an impeccable job at getting it together. It's just that there's unclear kind of items here that could really put a damper on this project if I read this correctly per the zoning bylaw. So that's what I'm getting at is, if it constitutes a floodway, then this project is I don't know what the status of this project would be.
Mr. Thomas, this is Elliot Bray again.
Go ahead.
As we stated, we are 100% prepared to the planning board. There was some preliminary discussions already with the zoning enforcement officer, and if required to come back, we will come back. We're more than comfortable with that. I have a lot of confidence in Chris's knowledge in this area, and we'd just like the board to act on our application.
And I think with that, to me, the thing that's still unsettled, and I appreciate the work that's gone into having some compensatory areas that won't be disturbed, but I'm still sort of wanting to have a further discussion about the waiver request for the no disturb zone, the 25-foot no disturb zone per the town's policy.
If I can speak to that with the utmost respect, because honestly, I don't make the law. I try to read the law. And as Chris has said a few times, under Mass General Law 40, Section 6, this lot is a pre-existing, non-conforming lot, 5,000 square feet of area, 50 feet of frontage, and all reasonable steps have been taken to accommodate the Wetlands Protection Act. Not, I think, as Chris says, I think the term he used was, John used, an impeccable job. We have done everything that we can do. The town, with all due respect, does not have a wetland bylaw. It has a policy, and I absolutely believe that we cannot be denied as a result of your concern on that particular area. We are a pre-existing non-conforming lot. There is no wetland bylaw. This is a policy. I believe that's black letter law.
And Mr. Fernandez, if you want to debate the merits of it as well, the policy states the commission may grant relief from portions of the 25-foot no disturbance zone requirement if there are significant attempts made to meet the requirement and a clear showing that the requirement cannot be met. I mean, I understand. You know, I think we've demonstrated we've been back and forth several times. I think we can't cite it at the front. You know, this is a non-conforming lot. If this lot were created yesterday, I would agree with you. This project wouldn't be permittable per your policy, but we have a non-conforming lot, so there's physically no way to get to the back of the lot without coming through the 25-foot. We can't avoid it.
I can understand and appreciate that, but the language of the policy to me is clear, and that the default answer of the town is that any project that comes before the board, we would require a no disturb zone for the entire length of the wetland boundary. And we could grant, where does it go? Could grant relief for portions if there are portions of that requirement. But, you know, when I look at the length of the blue line that, for lack of a better word, we're intruding on in this project, there's probably, 80% of that line, that work is being done within that 25-foot no disturb zone. So, to me, this is more of a question for my colleagues on the committee. What precedent do we have in waiving a portion of a wetland boundary that, that's significant, roughly 80%?
No, this is unprecedented. And it sounds like from the applicants or the legal counsel there that any postage stamp lot that was created before the existence of current regulations, that the owner can do anything they want on it.
If I may, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, well,
provided we meet the performance standards as evidenced by the engineer. Provided we meet those performance standards. If we did not meet those performance standards, you are absolutely correct. This would be a prohibited lot. You could clearly deny it. I don't question that at all. But since it's pre-existing, non-conforming, and it meets the performance standards, I would respectfully state that this will be approved at the next level, if denied.
And the performance standards you're referring to is just the list of regulations within the Wetlands Protection Act. Is that what you're referring to? Because, if I were a prospective buyer for this, it's got problems all over it. And this is the problem. I mean, this is why the Wetland Protection Act was created, is because builders were filling in wetlands, building houses, and selling them to unsuspecting owners. And then come springtime, the water still goes to the wetland areas. It bubbles up in people's garages. And, you're saying, well, the lot existed, therefore we don't have to really...
Again, Mr. Chair, I want to be clear. On the plan, as articulated by John and Chris and the people at Tilton, the flood volume compensation, etc., all these mechanisms to protect this lot have been met mathematically. That's why we are a pre-existing non-conforming lot and we meet those compensation schedules. If we didn't, I absolutely agree with you. We would be summarily dismissed here. And no go. That is not the case. So I don't think you're setting a precedent at all, because somebody's going to have to come in and punch every box we punched. They got to meet the 4 criteria. They got to meet the performance standards, et cetera, et cetera. That is not.
Well, when I use the word precedent, I mean in terms of granting a waiver to the town's policy. You know, I understand that what you're looking at is the state law. I'm solely looking at the plain text of the town's policy, and that it seems firm that that it would be a requirement for any project that's proposed that there's no disturbance within the 25-foot disturbance zone unless, clear efforts are made to get around that. And we can certainly grant relief to portions of it. That's the term portions is what I guess I'm having a hard time with, given that the portion I see is roughly 80%. Again, that's my quick, you might have better math on that than I do, but.
Yeah, but you're also implying that our policy is not really enforceable.
Well, I'm saying it's not a wetland bylaw. If it were a wetland bylaw, there's no question. And I want to be frank with the board. I work with a lot of colleagues. The board works with people. Mark Dombrowski, who was my professor in law school 36 years ago, I reviewed this project with him. We're in complete agreement. If there was a wetland bylaw, this would be an entirely different application. If you had a zoning bylaw, we still would prevail in his opinion, but it would be a little more complicated. But with a policy, that's not the case. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful, sir, or members of the board. I'm just trying to be as factual as I can.
Yeah. Well, the tone is, we got you, and we're going to have to. As a board, we're going to have to approve this. But
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. So part of the reason why I'm so harped up on this zoning bylaw requirement, because in the other land use regulations, it states under section 5 that there's supposed to be a routing procedure, and this is supposed to go to all these boards. And basically, because this project's within the floodplain overlay district, it says it needs to go to comments to all these boards, and then it shall be considered by the appropriate permitting board prior to issuing applicable permits. So I don't know if that's for us before we issue any permits, and that they basically supersede any sort of decision within this wetland protection, floodplain protection district. So I want to be certain that, for instance, I'm not overstepping this process that the town has. And that's why I've requested that they consult the planning board on this, because I don't know if we can, I just don't know what authority I have to issue a permit if it supersedes some local criteria that I'm supposed to acknowledge. So I don't know if the applicant has even looked through this whole entire zoning bylaw or if they've read it, but it would be under 175.13.4, section D, number 5.
I have reviewed that, and it was our plan, as stated in my letter, that we would go to the planning board, we would seek their guidance. If they said, hey, we have to just consult with the Conservation Commission, we would be more than happy if that would happen. Typically, the process, in my experience, and the people I'm sitting with here today, is we go to the zoning board, we go to the conservation. This is the process we take. If a mistake has been made, I apologize, but I don't believe it has.
Okay, so I guess my question has not been answered, because I just don't know what the answer is. I mean, I don't know if my board's even able to give this because it's within the floodplain protection district, and that's what I'm getting at. Is I would need clarification as to whether this is something that my board is able to basically approve if it's in the floodplain protection district. Because under section 5, it says there has to be a process. There's a routing procedure, as it clearly states. So I'm just stating that I don't know if this process has been fulfilled.
Well, it sounds like, no, you do know, it hasn't been fulfilled. And if we were to issue a permit, then it would potentially be in violation.
Well, you're discussing holding up a state permit on a local zoning regulation. That's not. The Conservation Commission, acting under the Wetland Protection Act, has full authority to issue this permit. If we go before other boards that require revisions to the plans, we would have to come back to at least your agent to make a determination if it's significant or not. If it's significant, we would potentially have to re-notify abutters and file a formal amendment and come before you. If it was deemed insignificant, it was Scribner error or something minor, it would be administrative plan change and we'd move forward with the existing order. So, the applicants agreed to go discuss with the planning board this floodplain overlay district, but there's nothing here that would preclude the board from issuing and making a decision on this project. And I understand there's issues here with this 25 foot as well, and concern of 80% of it on the site, but you're considering a land taking without compensation here if you were to deny this too under your policy.
Not necessarily. I think that the question I have is, what is the rationale for 25 feet? It seems like an arbitrary number. Why not 24? Why not 26? But unless it's that when this policy was developed, the science indicated that any activity within 25 feet was so significant to the wetlands that really no activity can be taken without impacting wetlands in that area. So that seems standard with a lot of other towns in the area. They seem to have accepted that section within 25 feet of wetlands, no activity could be accomplished in there without impacting the wetlands. So again, I put that more to the members of this committee, and particularly those who are involved in potentially drafting the policy. But that's the hard part that I'm having it's what I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around, is how can we have this policy, but then, be asked to sort of set it aside for 80% of the project here.
I keep hearing the 80%, but that we presented you some numbers. When you look at the actual impact numbers, I don't know the history of Norton. I would imagine waivers have been granted in the past. We're talking about 3,000 square feet of permanent impact in your 25 foot no disturb zone. So I know you're saying 80%, but 3,000 square feet is small. Even the Wetland Protection Act allows you up to 5,000 square feet of wetland fill, and we're not touching the wetland here. So we've spent several months trying to work with you in several hearings, trying to work with you on the 25 foot. But I do agree with Attorney Brace that under the Wetland Protection Act, we are fully compliant and even exceed that with the mitigation. We're not required to provide mitigation under the Wetland Protection Act for the 25 foot. So we've gone above and beyond the requirements of the Wetland Protection Act, trying to work with you and the members here to provide mitigation. We're providing almost 4,000 square feet of mitigation. 2,000 of that's in the no disturb zone. We're preserving 5,000 square feet. So, I know it looks a lot on paper, but we tried to present a mitigation and impact table to really show you that the numbers aren't as large as they might be for some other projects that may have altered more.
I can understand and appreciate that, and I think that speaks to the lengths you've gone to try to make up for this difference. I think the challenge is, at the end of the day, the design of the house is still within 8.8 feet of the wetlands boundary. You've got grass going right up, loam right up to the loam and seed right up to the wetlands boundary, and that's all within the 25 foot no disturb zone, which the policy indicates we ordinarily would accept no disturbance of.
And I can comment further on prior issues where this has come up, and they've pretty much been confined to existing old construction where some modification of that construction, whether it be an addition, a garage, something to enhance an existing structure, does come in conflict with a small portion of the 25 foot no disturbance. And that wins approval almost all the time, simply because it's an existing structure. This is an entirely new construction designed to perhaps use this substandard lot to a greater extent than it should be. And that's really the conflict here, in my mind.
And we appreciate that, Mr. Chairman. But at the end of the day, there really is no way to build a house lot here without encroachment into the 25 foot. And, you know, I think the applicant and the team here have made the best absolute effort working with this board to avoid. We've reduced some of the impacts in the 25 foot as shown here. We've pulled back along the driveway edge. We're going to restore that. There's really nothing else we can do here at this point. We can't, there's nowhere to put the house where it's not going to be in the 25 foot. We can't avoid the 25 foot to get to the back of the property. It's just not feasible. And if the board were to deny based on the 25 foot, you're basically deeming this a non-buildable lot under your policy, which is not compliant with the Wetland Protection Act. So, you know, I don't know if anybody on the team has anything further to say, but at this point, I think we put the best effort here forward with the best design and tried to minimize and mitigate to the extent we can.
Well, my only comment is I don't understand why this was considered a buildable lot to begin with, but you guys are really pushing the envelope. That's all I can say.
So it's my understanding as talking with the building inspector that he's instructed the applicant to pursue a special permit with the planning board. So the sign off and approvals for this, however it happens, they're going to have to go through the planning board through special permit process. My only concern is that this project's in a floodway based on what I'm reading through here. So if the applicant is informing us that they're not in a floodway, then, for instance, they'll have to come back to us to confirm that that's the case.
Understood.
And the
So what actions can we take now?
I guess the biggest question that, you know, is that I guess we want to discuss, Megan, you were talking about this with me earlier, was the potential issuance of a order of conditions, and delaying it to the next meeting would be the more appropriate action due to the 21 days or something of that regard. Is that what you were talking to me about?
Yes, the 21 days would fall on the date of the next meeting, so it'd be more prudent to hold off issue, close the hearing next meeting and issue it next meeting at the same time.
But,
Would be because of that 21 days if that was to be the case. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Okay.
But do we even want to issue an order of conditions?
Well, that we're going to have to.
And that's for the commission to deliberate upon. But I'm just giving you kind of the status as to the deadlines and potentials for this moving forward. You know, this has been as the applicant has stated that they've done a lot of work on this project, but there are it appears to be some still lingering issues from the members that probably need to be deliberated on.
All right. So, is it acceptable to the applicant that we continue this hearing until November 14th and can potentially issue an order of conditions on that date? I mean, we can't certainly issue it before then, so it wouldn't really change anything.
Elliot, I'll defer to you on this.
I apologize. My client is actually working. I'm trying to text him this second. Can I have 30 seconds, please?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I apologize, but he's...
Sir, maybe we could have the thing blown up again so we can see where
okay. Extension is approved and agreed to.
Where would you like me to blow up, sir?
Well, I don't know where the greatest points of contention are. I mean, but I suppose, well, I at least would like to look at this map again, scrutinize it again.
Elliot, just so you're aware, I'm not available on the 14th.
So Elliot is on the phone now.
Oh, okay. I'm not available for the 14th.
We're gonna let him know. So Chris is not available on the 4th of November.
Not via Zoom, Chris?
No, unfortunately.
Well, then,
But there are no, I mean, we've kind of reviewed all of the issues here, so
Yeah.
technically, we don't really need a representative on that date in order to issue a order of conditions.
I agree, Mr. Chair. I'm in agreement. We'll go with that. Was it November 14th?
November 14th, yeah.
That would be agreeable.
Okay, so unless there are further questions or discussion, we can consider a motion to continue this hearing. Let me just find my agenda wherever it went. I seem to have lost my agenda for the moment, but it is, I believe it's file number 250-1115. Does that sound correct?
Correct.
All right, so we can consider a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to continue DEP file 250-1115 to the November 14th meeting of the commission.
Mr. Chairman, before you do that, just a point of procedure. I don't recall if this is open to the public for comment. I don't know if
It is.
We can certainly do that.
I
So
don't,
the public, I don't know if anyone from the public is here to speak on this project. I don't recall seeing anyone from here, but if there is anyone that would like to speak to this project before they vote to continue this to the next meeting, please either take yourself off mute and say your name.
Thank you.
or you could raise your hand with the reactions button, but I don't see anything, so I think we can potentially continue with the motion. A motion made by Dan
Yes.
and seconded by,
Second.
we got a second by Thomas, so roll call vote starting with Mark and Dan.
Aye.
And Ron and Tama,
Aye.
and I'll throw in an aye, so this is continued until November 14th, but the issues are limited and we don't technically need a representative to issue an order of conditions at that time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members.
All right, very good.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I'm puzzled as to where I put my agenda. Oh, here it is. Got it. All right, so we now have the last item of continued public hearings, file number 250-1113, notice of intent 0 East Hodges Street. And they have requested a continuance until November 14th.
So moved.
Motion made by Dan and seconded by?
Second.
Seconded by Ron. Roll call vote starting with Mark and Dan.
Aye.
Aye.
And Ron and Tama.
Aye.
And I'll throw in an aye, so hearing for 0 East Hodges Street is continued until November 14th. There are no requests for certificates of compliance, but we do need to issue a order of resource area delineation for file number 250-1112, an NRAD for South Washington Street. I think we got a draft of that ORAD in our packet. It's pretty straightforward. Anybody have any comments about it? If not, everybody had it to review, I assume. So we can consider a motion on accepting the draft as submitted for file number 250-1112. It's a ORED.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Motion made by Tama, seconded by Mark to accept the draft of the order of resource area delineations for file number 250-1112 as drafted, starting with Mark and Dan, a voice vote.
Aye.
And Ron and Tama.
Aye.
And I'll throw in an aye. So the order of resource area delineation is accepted. Our next item is minutes for October 11th. We had.
Did we do the continuance for 0 East Hodges? I can't remember if we did.
We did. Don't ask me who made the motion, but I'll bet it was Dan and Ron.
Okay.
I think I did, yes.
Okay.
And we're up to minutes for October 11th. We had a full board with the exception of Carrie. And I didn't go through it with a fine-tooth comb, but I didn't see anything that stood out. Anyone else have any comments? Comments or a motion, one or the other?
All right, I'll make a motion to accept the October 11th meeting minutes. Going to check now to make sure that Pearson is spelled correctly in every instance.
Well, you might have an alter ego that you don't quite know about.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion made by Dan and seconded by Tama. Starting with Mark and Dan, aye or nay?
Aye.
And Tama and Ron?
Aye.
Aye.
And I'll throw in an aye, so the motion carries. We've accepted the minutes as drafted for October 11th. And new and old business? Comments? John?
So we did have a site inspection from Pear. They finished up Chartley Pond, so that report looked good, and they submitted it to the state for us. Next year will be Norton Reservoir, and then Chartley, of course. But nothing really major to report as of new. We have a couple of upcoming projects coming in. If anyone looked at the fee schedule, I actually have, before I even get into the fee schedule, I actually have circulated a copy of the potential wetlands bylaw to Dan Pearson and also Carrie Schneider to take a look at. So they will be part of our bylaw committee, I guess. They volunteered, right, Dan?
Yes, I have. They
Right.
can fly at me, that's fine.
Right. So they will be looking at some of my comments to it and hopefully be providing additional comments. But we're hopeful to get a draft to work on over the winter, along with kind of bringing in a fee schedule and everything. But that potential fee schedule is hopefully going to be something that we're going to be looking at for the next town meeting to bring in as well, because it needs to get voted upon and whatnot. So, but that's been something that we've been discussing as a town. The cleanup at Rose Farm is scheduled for this Saturday, 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. If anyone's interested, we've got some volunteers from Wheaton College, and I've also got a bunch of people from the LPS that have been willing to lend a hand. So we're going to clean up the entrance to Rose Farm. It's been fairly overgrown if anyone's driven by to Edith Reed lately. But then we also need to discuss whether the commission wants to hold a meeting 2 days after Christmas on the 27th.
Which is the feast of St. John, by the way.
I would prefer not to. I'm guessing that we might be out of town, but
Okay. So we just need to make sure that we either could have a quorum or to let applicants know that for any sort of decisions or anything like that, whether there's a window that we need to be mindful of.
So you would be proposing a meeting on the 12th,
Yes.
and then the possibility of one on the 28th?
Is it the 28th? I don't remember what day
Well,
it was.
that would be a Wednesday if it's 2 days after. Oh, I see. If Sunday is 25th, then it would be the Tuesday, the 27th. I don't know. You see, it's going to put us in difficult straits with regard to. The first meeting in January is the 9th.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be, I mean, as long as there are no hearings that get closed on December 12th, because that's basically a month.
Right.
And then, so, you see, I don't, the way I learned it was if the commission doesn't act on issuing an order of conditions, then the possibility is there that the project goes unregulated. We yield our jurisdiction. Mm-hmm. So we just have to be sure we don't close anything on the 12th.
Right. So that's kind of the decision that I'd have to make known to the applicants that have active permits or are looking to close as soon as possible or have their project ready for next year, is to make sure that they know of the timeliness for getting their applications in and getting them in before the 12th and approved before the 12th. So that way they can, appropriate their timelines.
It's a tough argument to make, though, that the order of conditions has to be issued in that time frame, because everything's going to be frozen, and people don't necessarily start construction in January, do they?
No, but I mean, if they're looking for a quick turnaround, I mean, I can't speak on behalf of an applicant. I mean, when they want to close something and they've got all the stuff in and they have all of the information in to close, they could request for close. They can request one, and the issuance of said permit would need to follow.
Yeah. Well, we just have to be sensitive to being sure that we don't close anything on the 12th.
Right. So in that case,
would be fine.
So that then, for instance, what I'm getting from the members is that that's the only meeting in December that we'll have is on the 12th. And
if you want someone, John, who's going to be there on the 27th, I can be there.
No, I mean, I don't want to, obviously it's the holiday, so I don't think a lot of people will potentially want to come to a meeting on the 27th anyway. But, there are people that have strict deadlines. I want to make it known to them ahead of time, basically, that there will be no action from the commission during this time, on the 12th. No action can be made. You can definitely propose anything, but no action's going to be made. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but presumably the same is true for these firms, that they're not necessarily going to want to come to a meeting on the 27th either.
I don't think a lot of firms will want to. I'm sure they'll want to spend the time with their families and their loved ones, but I don't know. I can't speak on behalf of other firms and applicants.
But what if they've had enough of their families and their loved ones?
Well, Dan, you know what? Then they can work 80, 90 hours a week, but I took this job because I didn't want to do that anymore.
What about those people who have two families and each family doesn't know about it?
Well, I can't speak on that one either.
All right.
One is more than enough.
Yes, I will agree with you on that one, Mark. One is more than enough.
I would probably be available on the 27th if we needed to. I don't know if it's the kind of thing that we can just play by ear as we get a little closer to see if there's anybody chomping at the bit to get through a meeting at that time.
I think we'll probably know more in the next week or two. Come November, we'll have a better understanding. It's more so with kind of gauging the commission's thought and feelings on a meeting at that time. So it seems that some do not want to attend and some are unable to attend, and some would be willing to attend. So it's just something to think about.
I think it's reasonable to keep the holiday period a holiday period.
All right. So the chair has spoken.
We need Peter Wiggins to bring up adjournment.
Chime in.
So with that said,
all right.
Do you want a motion to adjourn?
Yes, please.
Motion to adjourn.
All right.
Everyone thumbs up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.